Chances are that if you're watching this video, you want to be a faster runner. The problem is that most people who train to get faster often train completely wrong. When you look at the marathon debuts for elite runners like Kipchoge or Sarwe, they're running in something crazy like 2 hours 10 or faster. And there's a reason that they are running that speed at their first ever marathon. It's not because they train harder, it's because the entire way that they've trained from starting to run to that race is completely different to how recreational runners like you and me actually train and run. There's just like a fundamental difference between the way that a recreational runner will approach running and the way that an elite runner would approach running. And this fundamental difference has a massive impact on your speed and sort of the amount of speed that you can actually expect to get. And this difference isn't tied to the fact that elite runners are just like healthier, fitter, more genetically dispositioned to being faster runners or anything like that. It's purely methodology that can be applied whether you're the slowest runner in the world or the fastest. And we'll talk a bit more about that methodology later in the video. But first I just want to take you through what a typical journey of a recreational runner looks like and what a typical journey of an elite runner might look like in contrast. This is the typical journey of a recreational runner. One day, you start out running. You do couch to 5k or a park run or something like that, just so you get out and actually run something. You set yourself a goal, whether that's a 5k, 10k, half marathon, whatever. Once you've done that distance, you either stop entirely because you've done it or you keep going. And generally the goal that you choose is a longer distance. So if you've just done a 5k, then naturally you choose a 10k. If you've just done a half marathon, then the marathon is the next stop and so on. This is an intuitive feeling that we should just go for the further distance and run further, and that's where the achievement is. The achievement is the distance. For elites, it's totally different. For elites, it's not about the distance, it's about the speed over a given distance. Elites don't run out racing half marathons or 5Ks or 10Ks or whatever. They start way smaller. Elites start on the track. They'll start training 400 meters, 800 meters, 1200 meters, and they'll just rinse and repeat those distances, constantly getting faster until they have gotten as fast as they can at those distances. And then they move up. Suddenly it's 600 meters, 2000 meters, 3Ks. And then eventually, once they smash those distances and get faster, it's 5Ks, and so on and so forth until they get to the marathon. And then obviously by the time they're at the marathon, they've built up so much speed at these smaller distances that they're just sort of extrapolating that at a further distance. The achievement isn't completing the distance. They could have completed the distance years earlier. It's about smashing a high speed at that distance. So that's essentially how elites can blast out these like absolutely mind-blowing times on their first try. It's because they've been smashing speed at smaller distances for years, building up that distance and building up the speed at that distance slowly until they get to the marathon. We'll talk a little bit more about that later in the video, but essentially what I realized is I am very keen to get faster at the marathon or any distance really, and I've always been focused on distance. I kind of started out with a half marathon and eventually went up to a marathon and then just started trying to get faster, staying at that marathon pace and never really thinking about the track or 5Ks or 10Ks or anything less than that. But not anymore. I've done a few years now of back-to-back marathons, 2 or 3 marathons a year, and I am getting faster, but I'm not getting much faster. And I think that this complete change in methodology, taking a leaf out of the book of the elites and focusing on the track and then building up from there, is going to be what is going to get me my new marathon PB. So for the rest of this, into the new year, 2026, so you might be watching this in 2026, I am not going to do a single marathon. I'm going to focus on smaller distances on the track, build up that speed, and then I'm going to start marathons again in 2027. And when I do, I'll come back faster than ever, hopefully. But in this video, I want to talk about why I think you should probably think about doing the same. So imagine you've just ran a 10K. You do it in 60 minutes, that's 10-minute miles, and then you decide, okay, I've done the 10K, now it's time for a half marathon. You do that, and then you decide, okay, now I'm going to do a marathon. That's the natural progression, right? Just bump up the distance. Well, you can't expect the paces at your half marathon and marathon to be somehow magically faster than the 10-minute miles, 60-minute 10K that you did. You're kind of capped at that pace because you're just taking that same pace and adding on more distance. There's nothing there that's going to get you faster. Essentially, if you only build distance, you're not going to get faster. If you just keep doubling the distance, adding on more miles, it's not going to get you any faster. Yes, your endurance increases, you can go longer, but you're not getting any faster on those distances. Now here's what it looks like if you do what the elites do and just completely flip that logic of distance and speed. So just get rid of the 10k, forget the half marathon, and definitely stop thinking about the marathon. You start on the track, you do 400 meters, that's one lap of a track. You just keep rinsing that until you're fast. Then eventually you try to hold that distance for 800 meters. You can't quite hit the pace that you were at the 400 meters, so you keep trying until you get in a similar pace at 800 meters that you were getting at 400 meters. And at each of these distances, you keep doing that distance, you stick at that distance until you're as fast as you can possibly be at that distance, and then you move up. So when you come to do the marathon, you're essentially as fast as you're roughly ever going to be, give or take a few minutes. Elites spend years on the track. Look at the track history, no pun intended, of any elite athlete, and they have been smashing out the track. They'll have records in the 5 and 10,000 meters and probably even shorter distances, and they only probably get into the marathon later in their career as they start to approach their late 20s and 30s when their bodies build up endurance and a lot of speed. But you know, in their early years, 100%, they've been on the track without exception. So if that's the route for every elite athlete, and elite athletes obviously are the fastest athletes, why would we not be able to do that as recreational runners as well? We're not going to be at the same speed because we're not elites. But as a general approach, why not take that same strategy and apply it to our own running? Instead of approaching every race as just like another distance to finish, we think about it as becoming the fastest that we can possibly be at a given distance. Instead of increasing the distance after every race, we stick at that same distance and hammer out more and more iterations of that distance, getting slightly faster every time. To put it in very simple terms, we're essentially building up our top end speed at a given distance and then stretching that out, stretching, constantly gradually increasing the distance until we hit our target distance. And for me, that target distance is the marathon. So like I said, I'm going to target the marathon in 2027. At the time of recording this video, I'm actually taking a little bit of a break. If you've seen some of the earlier videos, I had a stress fracture that's been lingering since the summer this year. This is 2025, and I still haven't shaken it, so I'm taking a big rest off to make sure that's fully recovered. Then, once that's recovered, I'm going to start hitting the track, doing speed intervals, shorter distance stuff, 3-kilometer races, 5Ks, 10Ks, cross country, that sort of thing, and then a few half marathons, but nothing more than that. And then in 2027, I'll come back with a completely different foundation and hopefully faster than ever. Now, there's 2 caveats I just want to focus on when I'm talking about this whole speed thing, and it's that if you are doing marathon training, you should still be thinking about speed. You can and you absolutely should train speed if you're doing a marathon. The difference is the way in which you train speed. So if you're training for a 5-kilometer race, you're probably doing quite short intervals, 400 to 800 meters, 10 by 800 meters or something like that. Whereas if you're training for a marathon, your intervals are going to be longer, but with shorter reps. So you might do 4 by 600 meters. And that's because the top end speed that you need is just less at a marathon, because you're not really going to hit your top end speed. You need more of that endurance. But to build that speed endurance, obviously you need to actually build your top end speed. That's going to push your lactic threshold, which is essentially that a threshold, for simplicity's sake, it's the threshold that you want to run just below if you're running a marathon. If you push your top end speed, you're actually going to push your lactic threshold with it. So that's why it's important to train that top end speed in general. But when you're training a marathon, you're kind of just focusing on getting that speed endurance in there. Whereas, 5K, 10K, you're focusing on much more raw speed. A lot of books that talk about running marathons, such as Advanced Marathoning, which is a very popular book, do have training plans that focus a lot less on speed than you might expect. When they do have sort of VO2 max intervals in the training plans, again, it's 1200 meters, it's 1600 meters, it's very high distance reps and very few of those high distance reps. And that's because these are written by elites, and they make an implicit assumption that you already have speed in the tank when you come to run these marathons. And obviously for lots of recreational runners, that's absolutely not the case. So if you go straight into a marathon training plan that's running 1600 meter reps, you're probably not going to be running them very fast, because you haven't trained at a shorter distance. You're not going to be able to just blast out a 1600 meter rep at max effort. It's just not going to happen. You need to start smaller, build up the top end speed there, and extrapolate it to a higher distance. So in short, speed is important during marathon training. It's just a different sort of speed that you would do at the shorter distances. But if you do train those shorter distances, you will be able to extrapolate that to a longer distance when you come to do marathon training. The other caveat that I want to make is that even when they're racing shorter distances, elites still run a lot. Just think same volume, different purposes. So, for example, Arthur Lydiard, the famous coach from New Zealand, was infamous for letting his athletes, run 100 miles a week, even if they were running 800 meters on the track. The thing was that the composition of that 100 miles would be very different to that of a marathon trainer. So, whereas if you're training a marathon, you might focus more on long endurance efforts, tempo sessions, those longer 1600, 1200 meter reps that we've just talked about, and so on. If you're running shorter distance stuff, it's going to be a lot more speed work. It's going to be shorter speed work. It might be a lot less longer runs, but more runs. So, the overall volume doesn't change, but the makeup of that volume does change depending on the event that you're doing. Regardless of whether you're training for a marathon or shorter distance stuff, most of those miles are going to be easy miles. So if you want to learn a bit more about that, we have a whole video on easy running that you can watch by clicking here. If you've enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments if this is something that you're interested in trying out yourself. And if you're interested in running science and all of that sort of stuff, then please consider subscribing to the channel. We'll be putting out much more content soon.